Let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining today. We are so happy to have Elias Dabbas with us. Elias works at the intersection of online marketing and data science. He's the owner of the Media Supermarket, an internet marketing, search, and analytics company. He's also the author and maintainer of AdverTools, a Python package providing productivity and analysis tools for online marketers. AdverTools has over 90,000 downloads and counting. In his free time, he likes to build data apps and dashboards. Today, Elias will be talking about how to use Python to test robots.txt for sitemap URLs. Elias, it's great to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thank you very much. How's
you.
everyone? Welcome to our audience as well. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Do we start with, shall we go ahead and start with the script?
Yeah, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Here we go.
So,
can you see my screen?
Yeah. So, Elias, before we dive into the script, why don't you tell us a little bit about your, a few minutes, your background?
Sure.
And how you got into Python?
Yes, sure. I started a few years ago. Actually, I don't have a programming or engineering background. I have a business background. I've been doing sales and marketing all my life, and I stumbled upon data science, as probably most of us heard this word a million times, and I was just curious what it is, and I got into some courses, and I found out that I loved it. And then I realized that what we do in everything in online marketing, whether it's SEO, SEM, is data science. So it was immediately like interesting and very useful. And I started realizing that this can get me really productive in my own work, doing campaigns or generating keywords, or doing just anything that you can think of, because this is a programming language. You can tell the computer to do whatever you want. And for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been like almost addicted to coding and Python.
And that's really impressive, Elias, that's really impressive that you, as a marketer, with no engineering background, you motivated yourself to build a library, a Python library, now downloaded over for close to 90,000 people, right?
90,000 times, not people.
90,000 times, exactly. But it's still very impressive, right? It's a, measurable user base. And really, I saw the documentation, it's really grown, exceeds the standards of all the tools that you see.
Oh, thanks.
And
thanks.
you learn all this stuff, self-motivated. And
Go ahead,
because I get asked a lot, right, for marketers, how do we get started with Python and stuff? And they're like, wow, this is really tough. How do you get through those initial painful points?
Yeah, very good question. I mean, the most important one of the important things that I learned, because I'm not a programmer by training, is I used to think that computers, there's 2 ways of using a computer. Either you're a regular end user where you point and click and you use Excel, you use browsers and stuff, or you are a developer that looks at those black screens with green, blue, and red text on them that none of us understand what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned is that there's something in between. So you could be a software user and not necessarily a software developer. A developer creates software for other people to use, whether developers or end users. And that's a different story. Like getting into software engineering and deployment and testing and stuff is like a big thing. But with a few months of intensive coding, you can start getting productive for becoming a programmer as a software user. And this is when I realized that this is great, and I wanted
I
to
love that.
continue.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was trying to figure out that description, but you made it so clear, right? So we're talking about somebody that writes code for their own use. It's not for others primarily, right? They could share with others, but it's for their own use to increase as a productivity, right? Exercise, right? So
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that concept, and it resonates with that presentation that I saw from there's this company called Spacey, and
The natural language processing.
yeah, I taught a talk at Python India, which he talked about let them code. That's what it means, right? Let the users code your apps. So that she was encouraging software tool vendors to make their interfaces programmable, so that it's easier for the users to extend them. And I love that. So it makes a lot of sense. So that's great. And when you remember when you were trying to, because I'm trying to relate, because our audience is marketers, right? How do you overcome, what are the most difficult obstacles that you faced when you were on this journey as a marketer? And how do you overcome them, right? And also, how do you get past the frustration parts? I mean, you know, are inevitable, right?
That's a big one, the frustration. The big psychological thing that I had to overcome was, as a marketer, I'm used to dealing with human beings. And with humans, we respond to emotion, to kindness, to love, to hate. You know, you can get angry and get things done. You can get kind and get things done, or you can mess things up just by behaving in a certain way. None of this matters to the computer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, it doesn't care. You're angry, you're frustrated, you're motivated, you look good, you look bad. I don't care. You have to write the code specifically, explicitly, in a way that it tells the computer what you want it to do, because it does what you said. It doesn't do what you thought you said.
Exactly. You have to be really precise. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like this, it's very much like yoga exercises, where you're stretching beyond, because it's not a natural way of saying things like we do with humans. You know, you with a human being, you say, "Can you please make coffee?"
Exactly.
You can't say that to the computer. You have to say, face the kitchen, take 7 steps, look to the left, open the second cupboard, get the jar, do this.
Exactly.
This is how you tell the computer to make coffee. But so this was.
Yeah, you have to be really precise. And let me tell you, sorry to interrupt that.
Sure.
For me, it was the opposite experience, right? For me, it was like, oh, I'm used to, because I have come from the engineering background.
Okay.
So I'm used to be very precise, and you get all this math, and everything is very, you know, there is no ambiguity in the instructions, because that's the way you're saying, oh yeah, that's seeing it from the human. You tell something, and it can be interpreted different ways if you think about it, right? So you give an instruction, and it can be, but the human contextualizes it and knows what it means by the context and the common sense. But what's happening is that in the computer doesn't have that common sense, doesn't have that context. So you have to be more granular in detail.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason. So for me, wow, it's easy to, you know, I see the opposite. Why? It's easy to tell a computer, because you tell a computer, this is what you need to do, and 100%, 99% of the time is going to do exactly what you tell them. A human, you say the same thing, and it might have a difference, right? Oh, I thought you meant this, right? And then do it in a different. So that's really interesting. It's a different perspective.
Cool. Yeah. So we're doing the same thing, but from opposite directions, you and I.
No, that's what I love. I love that, because that's where we're having these conversations, because, you know, first of all, I want to make sure that people understand that this is not just Hamlet Batista with an engineering background and all the credentials and all this stuff, right, that can do this. This is accessible to marketers. You know, Elias, a marketer, no engineering background, built a library, a Python library, downloaded over close to 90,000 times, right? And found self-motivation in doing this for his own use. And it's not necessarily for end users, it's the productivity gains, right? And before we jump into the code, sorry to extend a little bit, how has your productivity as a marketer, right, when you build the tools and you compare what you were able to do before and what you were able to do after you build your tool and you use it on a daily day-to-day basis, right? How do you see that comparison? I think that's probably the main motivation that kept you improving your skills, and you saw that you could do what you were doing before 10 times faster and better, right?
Absolutely.
That's
You're absolutely right. I've seen like a change in the way I work, because, as you said, it's a productivity. So I'll give you a few examples. Like, it was difficult for me to take certain types of clients that would want campaigns that have like 50,000 ad groups or something like that.
wow.
Because setting those up would take a lot of time. But I realized that I can generate, we're talking SEM here, not SEO, just as an example. I realized you can, and when I say generate, I'm just talking about mechanical, getting combinations and permutations of product names together with intent-based keywords, and generate the keywords and create campaigns and ad groups, and you can do them in a very consistent way, in a very reliable way. And if something goes wrong, you can go back and see what happened, what went wrong. Another thing is I started to do ad hoc things. Like, I was working on an SEO project with a client, and we had a long list of things to do. One of them was I had a recommendation for them to add more tags to article pages, because they weren't tagged enough and they weren't appearing on the category pages. It wasn't a big site. It was like 700 articles that needed to be tagged again. So I just thought, wait a minute, there's this thing called web scraping. I know how to scrape. I exported those 700 articles. I scraped them, and I just produced a simple Excel sheet that had URL, title, tags, number of tags, and put them in an Excel sheet and sent it to the client. So this became a project management tool for them to keep track of which tags have been updated and which have not. And I was very happy 2 weeks late after that when they called me and said, can you please update the sheet, because we've had some progress. So I was very happy that it was useful for them. And they found it good. Analyzing Twitter accounts with clients, for example, I had a client who is they have a weather app, and I exported 5,000 tweets, and I counted the words, and I realized that 60% of their tweets do not contain snow, rain, storm, sun, weather, or any of the weather keywords that they should be tweeting about. So this was another example of something that you can just think of, and you just code, and you say, look, here's your last 5,000 tweets. You're not tweeting about what you claim to be. So
right?
They were tweeting more like astronomy and sky and stars and images like that, which is interesting. But you should clearly be the 60% should be more on the weather side. So I got hooked on this, and I said, wait a minute, this is like this is serious.
It's a superpower, right? It's what it is, right? It's a superpower, you being able to dream of processes and ideas and not wait for a tool to be built around it, right? Because that's the cool thing about it. You are not constrained in what you can do. It's incredible, and it's addictive once you manage it.
Oh yes.
Did you say that the analogy, I use this analogy of like a bicycle for your mind. So thinking about, what you can do when you do things manually, it's like walking, right? And when you learn to ride a bike, yeah, you could take a car, right? You could ride a car, but the cars are constraining where they can get into, right? So there's these crevices and corners that you can, only a bicycle will take you there, right? Or a motor or something like that, right? So but it's a painful initial learning curve, right?
Absolutely.
Learn to ride a two-wheeled vehicle is complex initially, right? And you fail, when you master it, it's incredible. Wow.
That's a great example. And just one final thought, which is about the same frustration you're talking about when learning to ride the bike. You have to go through a first few times where it just doesn't work, and you're late for work and you're frustrated and it doesn't work. But what happened with me is, like, I started to learn, and obviously I was learning on my own time at the weekends or at night or whatever, but I started practicing with actual data from my actual clients.
Exactly.
Let me export this sheet and see what I can do with it. Oh, I can visualize it this way, that way. And the problem is that you have to practice all the time to learn and remember the functions and the packages. And if you're not doing it, then you forget about it. And but once you learn enough, one day you get a call from the client, and without thinking about it, you start your Jupyter Notebook Python, you start working. That's the breakthrough that you want to reach, which is, okay, now I'm doing actual work for actual clients using a programming language. If you reach this point, this breakthrough gives you two things. The first one is what we talked about, which is productivity. As I said, you can scrape 700 pages, create your own sheet, and share it with the client. But the other nicer thing that happens is that now that you're using a programming language and you're relying on it, everything that they ask you or you think about doing, you're doing with this language. And if you don't know something, you check out the documentation and you learn, which in another sense, you're getting paid to learn, which is a virtuous cycle that can build up. And then, you just have to get to that breakthrough when one day, all of a sudden, you realize that you're actually doing real work with Python or whatever. And then, okay, you're good. You have tailwind pushing you forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So
great.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for that. So let's jump into the script. If you can tell us a little bit of the use case, right, and what you're presenting, and then you can walk through it.
Sure. Can you see my screen or?
Yeah, I see your screen.
Okay.
And we have a Q&A. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A. We'll pass them to Elias. And yeah, let's get started with
okay.
script. So thank you.
Great. So the title is I think it's clear. We want to check something that is very important with SEO. It's very easy to say, but sometimes things go wrong. So as a quick sanity check, we want to get a robots.txt file and check if it is blocking any of the URLs in our sitemap. So here are the steps. This is the plan that we are going to follow. We're going to select any robots.txt file and download it. And then we're going to extract the sitemaps from this file and select one and download it. And then we're going to go back to the robots file and extract whatever user agents there is. So now we have a list of user agents, and we have a list of URLs from the sitemap. And what we want to do is take all the combinations of user agent URL and check for each combination if this if this user agent is allowed to fetch the URL. Okay. So the first thing is we install the package. The package is called Advert Tools. To install anything, you just run this command, !pip install. And if you want to install multiple packages, you can separate them with a space, and you can enter them here. Capture is just telling the notebook not to show all the output of the installation. So I've already done that. So we start here by importing the packages that we're going to use. So as you can see here, we're importing them by giving them aliases, so we can see later where the functions came from and what they're doing. later on, like here, for example. And I like to always print the versions of the packages that I'm using, because sometimes you might look at the documentation and see something different, or you might see a different notebook, or if you want to report an issue, then it's always good to say, I'm getting this issue by using version 0.10.6, for example. Okay?
Yeah, you might want to also explain the format string that you're using here for people that are not familiar with that.
Sure. So this is a for loop for P in this list. So for each P for package, you can call it anything you want. Print p.name. So every package has a _name _ attribute, and then p.__ version _. Now I'm also this f string is a format string, which allows you to, within brackets, place variables. So this is a variable over here, and I gave it like, this is left indentation, right indentation. So if you want to make this like 19 characters, it's bigger. You can.
That's really cool. Yeah.
You can do it right aligned if you want, and it's right aligned over here.
That's really cool. Yeah.
So just for readability, we do this.
Yeah, I want to mention something about this. This is a really good choice of printing the versions, you know, and I'm lazy, I forget to do that. This is valuable because sometimes you get the notebook to work, and then 2 or 3 months later, I'm getting, you know, direct messages of articles that I published on Search Engine Journal. Oh, that is no longer working.
It's not working.
Because after these packages, they evolve and the versions increase, they might introduce incompatibility. So you want to make sure that you say, okay, this is the versions that I used when it worked. If you want it to work, make sure that you install those versions as a starting point. And then maybe later we can figure out how to make it work with the latest versions, but at least initially you can just make sure that they work with the existing versions.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the main thing, because many packages develop a lot and sometimes things stop working. So at least you know here, and remind yourself what you're doing. Okay?
Yeah.
So now we're going to define a variable. This variable is going to be called robots.txt _ URL, and you can give it any file over here. So from now on, we're going to just use this, and it will refer to this object. So we're not going to have to type.
Yeah, this is a collab specific feature, right? So you double click on it so they can see the form, what it looks like.
Yes. So this is the code, and this is just making it for end users.
For end users, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so I'll hide it here. So once we run this, now we've defined something called robots.txt _ URL, and it refers to this string. So now we want to download this file, and we create a new variable called robots.txt _ df. And if if we have anyone who's unfamiliar with this, it's short for data frame. It's a convention. So whenever you see df, it's a data frame, and the data frame is basically a table of data with columns of the same type, and it has many
you want to display
attributes.
it so we can see it?
Sure. Now, so let me just mention this. This is the function that retrieves a robots file. It's called robots.txt to df, and it takes a URL of the robots text file. So let's run it, and then print the file that we just downloaded. So now I think everyone who works with SEO knows what this is. Everything in this column is whatever is to the left of a colon on a line in a robots.txt file, just to make it simple. And this is anything to the right of the colon. So any directives we have, allow, disallow, user agent. We also have sitemap, and this is the content of this directive. So in addition to that, you have two columns here. These are just context, just metadata about this file. So in case you download 3 files and put them in one table, you know where this rule happened. So allow this is part of this file, and it's been downloaded on this date. So maybe you want to, a good idea might be to download these robots files once every month, once every quarter, just to keep track of the progress or your competition, or if they're doing anything. So this just keeps it, gives it context for later to use it. Clear?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, great. So next step over here is we want to extract the sitemaps from the robots file. So we create a variable called sitemaps, and the way we do it is, these are the steps and the explanation is here. Basically, it says, take the robots.txt df, which is this one, which we just created, and extract a subset of this data frame where the column directive taken as a string contains sitemap, case insensitive. So this is just like Excel filtering. And then once you filtered it, we only have rows that where the directive is a sitemap. Then take the content column, which is this one, and convert it to a list. Let me run this now. Okay, so now we've extracted the sitemaps from the robots file. These are the sitemaps that we have, and we're going to choose one of them and download it. So I want to choose the news sitemap and see, we're going to look at the New York Times and what they're covering these last 2 days. So again, we define a new variable here called sitemap, and it's going to refer to this string. So this, when you run this, it simply binds this value to this variable. Okay, now that we have this URL, we're going to create a data frame for the sitemap, and we're going to call it sitemap df. And the function for this is called sitemap to df. So convert the sitemap to a data frame. And a few words about this function. It takes a URL of a sitemap, but this can be any one of 3 different options. It can take a regular file.xml sitemap. It can be a zipped file, like you see here. It will unzip it for you. Or the most interesting case is if you have a sitemap index.
Wow.
In which case you just give the URL and it goes and extracts all the sub-sitemaps for you and puts them all in one data frame.
That's
just
awesome.
Please don't do this with the New York Times, because it's going to take you 15 hours with such a large website. But you know, it goes. So now we're going to do the straightforward option, which is just downloading this site, which usually 500, 600 URLs. Okay, so we've run this, we downloaded it. Here I'm just printing the number of rows and the number of columns that we have. And then I said sitemap.head. The head of the sitemap is show me the first 5 rows of this data frame. So the headers of this data frame, I'm sure they're familiar with everyone who works in SEO. These are last mod, lock, news, publication name, and so on. So this sitemap to df gives you whatever is in the XML sitemap. So sometimes you just have the location and last mod. Sometimes you have change frequency. Sometimes whatever is in the sitemap will be retrieved and put in this data frame. And there are also 2 additional columns that are just given to you. The first one is the sitemap from which this information came from. Now here, this is not very useful because we're just using one sitemap. But if you have a sitemap index, then you know which sitemap each one belongs to.
Oh, that's really cool.
And this is the download date of right now. just for reference again, if you want to download something again, you know that this happened on this date. Okay. So next step is to extract the user agents from the robots file, which is exactly the same steps we did when we extracted the sitemaps. The only difference is that the directive column should contain the word user agent. And then we take the content column and convert it to a list. So let me run this. Now we have a new variable called user agents, which is a list. And these are the 4 user agents that are available on this sitemap, robots.txt file. So now, just a quick calculation. So we have 762 URLs, and we have 4 user agents, which means we want to make 3,048 tests for each combination of user agent and URL.
Wow.
So this command runs, and as you can see here, we have 3,000 rows. Each report takes a row, and I think it's clear, I hope. So this is the URL that we're testing against. For this URL, for this user agent, check if this URL can be fetched by this user agent. And for this combination, it's true, true, true. And here we have false, 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 and so on. So now sometimes this might be correct. There's no problem in it. It might be problematic. So we can explore a bit more. We're not going to look at this manually. So here's what we can do. So I want to see the stuff that.
Let's say that we only want to see the Googlebot user agent.
Sure.
Right.
So we take this data frame and we take a subset where this data frame's user agent column is equal to Googlebot. Okay. So this is a subset. As you can see here, the numbers are not. It's much less than previously. It's 762. What we can do here is take the can fetch column.
You can, let's do a group by can fetch and count to see.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Because group by
dot group by at the end of the set, right?
Group by can fetch.
Yeah, group by can fetch, and then count. No, it's just do a count.
It's going to count all the yeah.
And that you see that there are no URLs that they're not URLs in that sitemap that are blocked by Googlebot.
Exactly.
We saw one that was false, right? Then we will know, oh, look, there's an opportunity real quick. You know, the New York Times is blocking URLs in the sitemaps for
exactly.
Googlebot, right?
Absolutely. Exactly.
And for example, let's change Googlebot to Omnibot that I see more false. Omnibot is, I don't know what bot is that.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, but it sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
All of them, right? So they don't want that, but
no, just don't come here. Don't visit us. You are not welcome.
Exactly.
And we can check this by looking here.
Oh, let's check Baidu, for the Baidu bot, right? See there.
Is this the Baidu bot?
No, let's see if the Baidu bot is there, right?
There's no Baidu bot. There's only 4. So this user agent is disallowed from everything, and this one disallow everything. Googlebot has specific rules, and Star has other specific rules.
That's really cool.
So it seems right that this is blocked. What else do we have here? Without bot, just on Gili.
Exactly, but what I want to make sure is that, you know, if you think about it, is for the audience, is that you're running the robots.txt tester granularly, right? you're being able to at scale, being able to test.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, the whole objective
Ideas
here
really quickly.
is for large scale testing, because if you're deploying 62 new URLs to the site or 62 new templates, and you have 7 different user agents in your robots file, that's 7 times 62 equals whatever, as we just made a calculation. So it's going to be tedious to do them one by one. And there's another way, by the way. Let's see this one, for example, and you can save it. It doesn't have to be a robots file that's online. So if you want to deploy, okay.
Oh, that's really cool. If you want to test, so think about how valuable that is, right? So think about
a new robots file.
A new robot, yeah. So you're making recommendations to the client, and you want to verify that the robot.txt you're sending over is going to do what you're expecting it to do, right?
Exactly. So this would be your the URL.
Yeah, this is really cool.
And it runs the same way, but instead of HTTPS www, you file, and this path would be your robots path.
Wow. This is great.
So this up to here, this is all automatic. All you have to supply is a robots URL, and then select a sitemap. Boom, boom, boom. Everything is done, and then here you can explore if anything is not as you expected, and then you either make changes or you say, okay, everything is fine.
That's right.
Okay. Shall we move here?
Yeah, let's go to the homework. So now instead of letting people do it, you're gonna let them cheat by looking at you.
We did. Okay, so I want to create a URL data frame, and we had a sitemap df. Oops, sorry. So the function's name is URL to df. Everything is to df today, huh? So we take the sitemap data frame, and from that data frame, we take the lock column, and we give it to the converter, which converts a URL list to a data frame. Let's see what happens. Okay, so let me go through the columns quickly one by one. So this URL column is exactly what you gave it at the beginning. This is unchanged, exactly what you have provided. Then we have all the different elements of a URL scheme. So you can immediately count how many HTTPs and how many HTTPS or FTP you have with a simple count over here, making sure you're doing it according to your strategy. Network location is clear. We have the path, everything after the .com. Query fragment, apparently we don't have any query parameters here or any fragments, and that's why they're empty. But if there were, they would be here. This is standard Python, okay? These are the standard elements of a URL. But what I would like to know more is that here we have a lot of information that we can dissect and understand more about. So what this function does is that it splits every path by the / character, and it puts every element into a column on its own. Okay?
That's really cool.
Now, as you can see, the names don't mean anything. They're 1, they're 2, they're 3, because there's no way to know what's here, because there's no standard in how to structure your URLs. Some websites have /language or /blog or community. Some, in this case, you have 2020, the date. So, but at least you know these are the directories that you have. So I'd like to share how I like to approach this very quickly. So I usually see that there's 3 types of information that we can extract from these directories. Okay, the first one I'd like to call metadata. And let me explain. So these three numbers, these are not keywords in the URL. Okay, 2020 is the year in which this URL was published. This article is not about the year 2020. So if this was something like elections 2020, then 2020 would be a keyword because it's about the year 2020, or 2020, the year of the X whatever. So this is, again, and it's not about the month of August. It's not about the 7th day of the month. This is just metadata telling us when this article was published. Live is metadata. It's telling us what this type of article is. PT is for Portuguese. Now, this article is not about the Portuguese language, right? It's not about the countries who speak Portuguese. It has no, it's about the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. So it has nothing to do with anything Portuguese. I'm just telling you that this article happens to be written in this language. So I like to think of these things as metadata that's very useful, mm-hmm. but not really the content of the page. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Another type of metadata is author names. So some websites you find / first name, last name, and the title of the article. This is also very interesting metadata because it tells you who wrote it. It's already clustered for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very important to remove some names that might be confused for certain words. Mm-hmm. Bill, for example, or Don. Like the word Don is a name. It's a person's name. At the same time, dawn is the part of the morning, very early in the morning, or we use it figuratively just to say the dawn of a new era, like the start of a new era. So we don't want to mix Don, the person who happens to be the article author, with the Don, the actual concept that's mentioned in the article.
Yeah, you gave me a great idea for an article. So I'm going to steal that idea from inspired. So I can see how I can use this metadata in the URLs with name entity recognition. So mm-hmm. If I can use mm-hmm. name entity recognition, parse URLs, extract everything, all the components, and then use NER to say, okay, this is a date, right? This is a language, right? This is a category, right? So, and exactly. so you can eliminate the parts that are not relevant to understand what the page is about. So I think
absolutely
that yeah. So I think that
and what this helps us, like this is the first type mm-hmm. of information, which is metadata. The second type is content categories. So here you have world, US, business, mm-hmm. Asia. This thing is about business. Mm-hmm. But business is a category, so it really helps us in figuring out what this is about. But what I think is interesting here is if you want to run any kind of clustering algorithm, mm-hmm. if you run it on all of these URLs, you'd get something not very interesting. You'll get something that says, oh, there's a cluster called business and a cluster about Asia and a cluster about music, but mm-hmm. we already know this over here. Mm-hmm. What would be more interesting is to filter out the articles that have arts / music in them, mm-hmm. and see if we can find clusters inside the music coverage of this publication. And then compare it to the music coverage of 2019, 2018, across months, compare music with drama, compare other arts. I think this might be interesting. Mm-hmm. Agree?
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome.
And finally, the last type of information that I think is interesting is this last part, which is this is the actual content of this page. Air India plane crash, stock market today, coronavirus está. This is Portuguese. Okay, so this is just a quick overview. I want to just also briefly show what
Can you
we
also,
get.
with your library, can you break the path into, and with the slashes?
It's already broke. What do you mean? Sorry.
No, you broke the slash. This, I mean the dashes, not the slash, the dashes.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do now.
Oh, okay. I went ahead.
But I want to just quickly show what, when we have query parameters, what happens. So let's say I have example.com/1/2 question mark price equals 10 and color equals blue. Okay. And I have another URL on this website, which is 1/2/3, price equals 15, color equals green, and size equals medium. Okay. So we run the URL to data frame function and we give it those URLs. And okay, so the path part, we know what it is, but now we have queries. Okay. So each query would have its own column. And each query would have the word query underscore as a prefix to the name of the column. So now we know we can sort by price, we can select by color, by size, by whatever you have in your data set. Now this is much more straightforward and clear than the path part, because this is explicit. It tells you price equals this. So you know these are prices, these are colors, these are sizes. The problem is sometimes you get these cryptic GXD equals 15326, which it's, you know, I don't know. Sometimes you can figure it out. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. But when it's descriptive, then it's beautiful. You can just sort by price, by color, and you have all these elements to slice and dice by.
Yeah, no, and I love this because I don't know if the audience agrees, but this, if you look at the notebook and what you're doing, playing and seeing what's happening, it feels like you're playing. It feels like Excel, like you're doing manipulation in Excel, right? But it's a far more advanced manipulation, right? It's like it's just, you know, like Excel on steroids, right? Being able to do this
That's exactly the way I think of it. Excel on steroids.
Exactly. You're doing the stuff you're used to do in Excel with the formula stuff with here. You're doing it, you know, far more advanced. And because you described it in Excel, you have to repeat the whole process again every time. You know, here you can say, okay, I'm going to do this for one client, but just put the parameter at the top. And now that I did it for one, I just run it again, and it will give me the analysis for a different one.
Exactly.
The whole thing, because I have all the instructions already laid out and tested.
Exactly. Okay, so I have a question that I want to answer. The question is, what is the New York Times covering these last 2 days? What are the keywords that they're using these 2 days? So I've prepared this simple pipeline that we can go through. So this is our URL DF, okay? So the first thing is, one second. I want to see the value counts of directory 1 and see what are the things that, that we have, okay? So here we see that the majority of the values are 2020 as expected. There's something big here called interactive, which we should separately analyze. We have Spanish, AR, maybe Arabic, Portuguese, Japanese, I think. And this is very interesting. I don't think there's any reason why a news sitemap should contain articles years back. There might be a bug somewhere because...
An opportunity to pitch. You see, guys, an opportunity to pitch.
No, I think it's what I see a lot in publishing sitemaps is that naturally they fix some mistakes. So they might have a typo, they might have wrong information that was reported, and they go back and they update it. But it seems that this script is pushing anything that's been recently published and or updated. Now, imagine the case where you have the name of a certain president appearing in 300 articles written with a typo, and they fix them all in one go, and everything gets pushed to the news sitemap, and all of a sudden, all of the New York Times news is about that president. So it's probably a bug. Anyways, I don't want to go too much here. I want to do the counting of the words. So I want to take a subset of the URL df where directory 1 is equal to 2020. Okay, so this way I'm removing interactive, I'm removing Spanish, I'm removing everything else, all the other years implicitly here, and I'm left with 514 rows. Okay, now it seems that the title of these pages happens to be the last non-empty value on each row. Okay, so here we have 3 empty values, 1. Here we have 2, and then we have this. So it's not consistent. Some of them have 7 directories, some of them have 8, some have 6. So one thing you can do is a pandas method called fill NA. So fill NA is not available, and we want to say fill NA. So everything that's NA that's not available, I want to fill it. So there's a lot of options with this function, but I'm going to use a method called forward fill, which means whenever there's an empty value, fill it going forward. So take this and put it here, here, here. Take this, put it.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay, cool. And you also need to specify whether you want to do it across rows or columns. So axis equals 1. So do it this way and not from top to bottom. Let's see what happens here. See, it filled everything NA with the last available value. So everything here is in directory 8. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're interested in this directory, only the content of this. I'm just going to put this in multiple lines so it's more readable. Okay. So now we have only these values in this column, and I want to count these words, right? Now, before going further, I just want to make a test and make sure that these are all .html contents, okay? So I want to check if this taken as a string, I want to test if it ends with .html. So these actually end with .html, we know, but we want to see everything here. We want to make sure that everything here as a string ends with .html. And as we did above, we can run value counts, and we see that everything is true, which means indeed that everything in this directory 8, after the stuff that we did here, ends with .html. Okay? So now I want to remove this HTML. So I say take this as a string and replace .html with the empty string. And we remove the HTMLs here. Now we do what you just said, take it as a string and split by dash.
Now you have the keyword. That's beautiful, yeah.
So now I want to run value counts, but my problem is that these are not words, these are lists. So what I want to do is put this on a row, second row, third row, fourth row, and so on. So there's a very interesting method with pandas. It's called explode. I don't know why they call it that, but it's what it does is.
I'm taking notes. Yeah.
Great. So you have, as you see, the index here is the same. Like these 0, 0, 0, 0. It says that these 4 words appeared on index 0, 0, 0, coronavirus COVID test. And now we have 2,312 words. Right? So now we can run value counts. Sorry for that. And let's take the first 30 values. And I think we have a clear idea of what the New York Times has been covering in the last 2-3 days.
And you know what you can do with the NLTK? You can remove the stop words as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The majority of them have been removed, but in some cases, yes, the, a, Biden, and so on. So you can see this is a, now, the important thing here is that we know exactly what we're doing. We've only taken the stuff that starts with 2020. We filled the NA and took this
is
last
great.
one.
So here you're seeing, right, essentially how you can do data journalism really easily. I mean, I want to say super easily, right? But there is a path for you to get here, right? And you can take, you know, I like to see that, you know, some publications are biased against one party or the other. And you kind of like show that, hey, look what, you know, CNN has covered in the last, you know, 7 days, and what has covered Fox News, because they're always one against very, very polarized. You say, hey, look at the polarization between these two publications, and show an interesting, you know, data journalism story. Right?
So this is the, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I think about it, is that you can download the news sitemap of 5-6 publications that you want to follow, and you can just, so everything up until this point is standard. Here, this script only works for the New York Times. So what you have to customize is, well, before writing the script, you have to go through the structure and figure out what's going on. They have year, month, date, they have .html. Once you figure this out,
and it shows you, right, that you know, you're not going to find a tool online that will allow you to do this. That's the beautiful thing about it. And the other part is that you hand off stuff like this to a developer, they're not going to understand the nuances about the directories and all that stuff that we're talking about. So that's what I see the value of marketers learning to do this. And this seems a bit complicated, but it's not more complicated than chaining, you know, functions in Excel, right?
Exactly.
When you're chaining functions in Excel, it's even far more scary than this, right? But look at it, and not as powerful, right? Not as powerful. That's the beautiful thing. So awesome. So we only have a couple of minutes left.
Shall we get, do we have questions? I see some questions. Or
I saw a question, and it was about, you know, if I answer it, it looks like not everybody saw it. So yeah, so check the RankSense Twitter account. So we have the tutorial from Elias. He's there with this notebook and everything. And this is recorded, so we're going to be publishing on our site, and we're also going to be doing a blog post from it as well. So, you know, thank you everybody for joining. I think it was I learned a lot myself. I'm ready to get some ideas from an SCJ article.
Great.
And, you know, really excited. And thank you, Elias. And if you want to mention how people can get in touch with you, a little bit about your company, what you do, how you help, you know, what type of clients you help, and if you collaborate.
Yeah, thanks. I thank you very much. You can find me on Twitter. This is my handle. And you can find my, whoops.
That's an error, so you got it wrong.
I got myself wrong. Sorry. Yeah, I have a bunch of tutorials on SEMrush, on Kaggle. This library is on GitHub, so everyone is more than welcome to contribute questions, suggestions, bugs, anything or questions they want, or suggestions as well. So yeah, thank you very much. It's very great to be with you, and I hope people found it useful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And anything about your business, how you help companies?
Well, this is what I do: URLs and online marketing campaigns, some SEO, customized. Basically, once you do this, you can customize the work that you do any way you want. So it's flexible.
Okay, awesome. That's really great. Okay, thank you, everybody. Yeah, we'll be doing this, more often. So thanks again, Elias. Hope, I think everybody got a lot of value, a lot of, thank yous, and seems like everybody was really pleased. And you made us look really good, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks to you, and thanks for the RankSense team that was very helpful all the time and made this very smooth. And
Awesome.
we'll be in touch with everyone on social media and in other events. So, and thank you again.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.